Chapter 7. After getting home from Colorado and reality setting back in, I remembered that I needed to find a job. This was not something that I was looking forward to doing. I began looking online trying to find something comparable to the opportunity I had at Enterprise. What I wouldn't have done to just have one more chance to be able to work there again. I loved working for that company. I even called my first area manager to see if I could come back and work in his area. He was shocked that I had been fired. He said that he had expected me to become a regional vice president one day. He also told me that unfortunately, once someone is fired from Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they are never hired back. One day my dad calls out of the blue. It was unusual to get a call from my dad. He tells me that he was thinking about starting a car sales business over in Daphne, Alabama. He said that he had been given the opportunity to rent an old service station building and that it had a parking lot big enough to be able to set cars out for sale. It also had a 2-bay garage attached to it with car lifts already in the floor that would enable us to work on the vehicles. He was still working full-time at the Chevron refinery in Pascagoula, and he couldn't be there to run the car lot during the week. He asked me if I would like to come manage it for him. He says that he would pay me a percentage of the profit we made each time we sold a car. Sounded great to me. I didn't know anything about selling cars, but I definitely knew how to rent them. How hard could it be? I can tell you, from the uttermost pain in the rear experience, running an entire used car sales business by yourself is truly not an easy thing to do. My dad did not have any prior experience working at or running a car dealership. I had no prior experience working at or running a car dealership. We had to learn the business the hard way, by making mistakes. Although in the beginning, we thought we had it all figured out. First thing we had to do was get vehicles. We had to buy our cars at the auction. I learned the hard way early on that car auctions were not honest places to buy cars. I also learned early on that most people associated in the car business were not honest people. It truly was a dog-eat-dog business, and money controlled everything. One day, I was at the auction buying cars, and on this day, I had bought a Chrysler Sebring convertible. I remember it driving into the building looking all clean and desirable. My heart started pounding before I even started bidding, and it continued pounding even after the auctioneer said, "Sold!" Man, I was so excited. It was one of the first cars I had bid on by myself. I couldn't wait to tell Dad about it. I just knew that we would sell it quick and make a good profit on it. We had bought a few more cars that day, and out of all the cars we bought, Dad had decided to drive the Sebring home. I followed behind him onto the interstate in another vehicle we had bought. As soon as we got on the interstate, all of this smoke started coming out of the exhaust. We pulled over and opened the hood, and Dad told me that it looked as though the head gasket was blown. I didn't know what that meant, but he said it wasn't going to be cheap to fix. And I knew what that meant. We weren't going to make a profit on that one. So we got back on the interstate and started heading home. I was disappointed that we were going to lose money on the Sebring, but I tried to stay positive. Maybe it won't be as bad as Dad said, I thought. All of a sudden, I see the car start sliding back and forth on the interstate as if Dad had slammed on the brakes for some reason. I slammed on my brakes, doing my best not to run in the back of him. Thankfully, neither one of us wrecks, and we were able to pull off on the side of the road. We get out of our vehicles, and I said, "What in the world happened?" By his reaction and facial expression, I could tell that he was pretty shaken up. After saying a few choice words, he explained to me that it felt like the car had just downshifted in the first gear all by itself. Sure enough, after having the car towed the rest of the way to a transmission shop, we soon found out that we needed a new transmission. This was the day I learned a very important lesson about the light system at the auction. You don't buy cars that are sold under a red light or a yellow light, only the green lights. After many more experiences similar to this one, we learned the expensive lesson of why you do not buy used domestic cars with many miles on them. We eventually decided that we would try to only buy imports. Honda, Toyota, and Nissan became our preferred manufacturers. They seemed to have less problems as they aged. Of course, this limited us on the volume of vehicles that were available to buy at the auction. But we truly did not want to sell problems to people. We were trying to build a business of honesty and integrity. Well, I say we, it was mainly Dad. At that time in my life, I was more focused on making money. I remember one time when we had bought a really nice Toyota Camry at the auction. It only had 50,000 miles on it. We sold it pretty quickly and made a profit on it. About a year later, the customer contacts us to let us know that he needed a new engine in the car. That just doesn't seem possible, we thought. That car only had 50,000 miles on it when we sold it, and it was a Toyota. We assumed that he must have done something to cause that to happen. We told him to have it towed to us, and we would take a look at it. We had it diagnosed by a technician and was told that, sure enough, the engine was bad. It was completely sludged up. This was when we learned a very important lesson about engine sludge. It occurs when the oil doesn't get changed and turns into a thick sludge that ends up causing engine failure. Once an engine gets, quote, sludged, there is no way to get it all out. The only option is to replace the engine. After seeing all of his oil change receipts, proving that the car must have been mostly sludged when we bought it at auction, we had an important choice to make. Do we tell him it's been a year since he bought it and there was nothing we could do? Or do we accept that we sold him a sludged up engine and do the right thing? Thankfully, even though it cost us a lot of money to do so, we decided to replace his engine for him. I eventually lost count of how many people he referred to us to buy cars. He was like a walking billboard for Daphne Auto Sales. It was truly my dad's idea to replace the engine. He always tried to do what was right by people, and it was that mentality that helped us to go on to become very successful in the car business. We eventually became so proud of what we had accomplished that we changed the name of our dealership to Strickler Imports. We went almost 16 years not ever getting a 1-star Google review. The entire time we were in the business together, I never stopped learning from my dad about the importance of doing right by people. Most of what I know today is thanks to him.